Hi, everybody. Welcome once again to You Can Thrive in SPED. Today I'm here with Andre Dowdy. Did I say it right?
You
We
did.
practiced, but then I still forgot. How terrible is that? So I had not met Andre until we connected about this event, but my conversation with him was so exciting. He's fired up. He wants to help teachers be not as burnt out and figure out ways to be engaging to kids. So that's why I invited him to be part of this, and I'm excited about what he can share. He has about 20 years in education, and I'm going to just let him fill in his background. Hi, Andre.
Hi, good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. It's nice and sunny here in
Yes,
Indiana.
yes. So my name is Andre Dowdy. I'm from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Born and raised here my entire life. I am an educator. I've been an educator for 20 years, and to be honest with you, I never thought that I would actually be a teacher. Growing up, I was the kid in the class who always was very musical. I would make beats with my hands on the desk. I would use a pencil, and the pencil was my snare. And so I would make the beats. I was a kid always in class humming and mumming and singing and whistling through my teeth without moving my mouth like this.
Sometimes
And
it's
then the
good to have
teacher
a
would
hearing
say,
impairment.
"Who's?" And then the teachers would always ask, like, "Who's whistling?" And I'd be like, "You can't prove that it's me because my mouth isn't moving."
You're my
I
favorite
was
kind of
that
student.
I was that typical student. I was studious. My mom and my dad did not play with education, so I would finish my work first. But then I would be bored because I didn't want to go to a center or I didn't want to continue reading the boring books. So I would just mess with all the friends and all the homies. And then I'd get in trouble for messing with them. Now they're finished with their work and we're all in detention together. I was that kid in class until I met my first black male teacher. And once when I met him, he said, "You know, you always sing, you're always musical. Show me what you got." And I was like, "Really? Like a showcase?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I'm on Star Search. I'm on the Apollo. I get the." So I showed him what I had, and he was like, "Oh, you're very musical. We got to get you in band." So I got into band, and little did I know that I could play multiple instruments by ear. Little did I know
Wow.
that I was very musical. And so that one teacher inspired me and so many of my friends and so many others that like we had talents and gifts we didn't know. From there, I became a drum major at my high school. And from there, I got the opportunity to get a scholarship to go to HBCU, which is a historically black college and university. And that university was called Langston University. And I was a percussionist for Langston University. And so I was supposed to be an ESPN broadcaster. But the more and more that I went through school, the more and more I realized that that one black male teacher made all the difference in the world. So I wanted to do the same. I wanted to become a teacher to give those students that same inspiration he gave me. His name is Mr. Irons, and Mr. Irons is still teaching. Mr. Irons is still teaching music at a high school locally here. And he's my Facebook friend. And you just like you, those are the types of teachers who are so special because my wife and I, he showed up to our wedding. He high fived, hugged us both because we were both students of his. And like you just don't find great teachers like that. And so shout out to all the great teachers who do things like that.
We
Just
all hope we're going to be one
somebody
of those.
like imagine going above and beyond what the norm of teaching is, and like that's thriving at its finest. Like becoming such where you're not just a student, but you're a person. And I remember in high school, he would check up on us. I remember he would come to the games when I was the drum major and I had questions because there was our music teacher was a little iffy during those years. I would ask him questions and we'd be on the phone for about 30, 45 minutes. and he was explaining the role of what a leader looks like as far as a drum major. I remember going to college, and during homecoming week, I would see him, and he would come, and we would talk, and just these are the types of teachers that are just phenomenal. And so anytime I do anything great, I always make sure that I reach out to him, and I'm like, hey man, just want to let you know, like, man, it was your inspiration that got me started in this whole thing. And so he's such a dope educator to me. I've been teaching for 20 years, so here I am as an elementary teacher. And I love music still, so I would add music to the curriculum. So I knew that a lot of my students could rap, and they could rap well. They knew all the Jay-Z lyrics. They knew all the Eminem lyrics, the 50 Cent lyrics. But when I asked them, what is 3 times 2? They paused. They couldn't give it to me. So we started to make raps and chants to fit that. I heard others who could sing, and I would bring my guitar up, and I would strum it to a song, and then they would start singing whatever the curriculum it was. And so just thinking outside of the box for those students. Next thing I know, they wanted a drum line. So I brought my drumsticks up, and we were beating on pickle buckets and desks, and we were trying any and everything to engage the students, but to also help pull their gifts. We started a choir. The choir worked as well. I brought all my instrumentation up there, so I'm kind of teaching them music without teaching them music. We're asking music teachers, can we borrow their stuff? I mean, all the things. And the coolest thing now is those students are now adults. And now they are tagging me on SoundCloud, on Twitter, on Instagram, like, listen to my music, Mr. Dowdy. And so that whole full circle is happening. And it's so dope right now. It is really cool to be able to help educators.
And all because of that one teacher that's just so powerful that made a change for you. And I look at all the people that you made a change for. It just gives me chills.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things as an educator, I teach middle school, and certain students will invite me to their high school graduation. And I'm like, it always just makes me feel so blessed. Like, wow, they still remember me. That was 6, 7 years ago. But to know that you had an impact on somebody is what keeps us going. And in special education, so many of our kids have those hidden talents that you're talking about. And
absolutely,
we're always trying to find the ways to tap into that. So I love that message.
Yeah, and it's really cool because oftentimes we as teachers, we overlook it because we're so used to curriculum, or catch them up, or we got to finish this IEP. We got to do it this way. And sometimes we just miss it because we're not paying attention to that part of the skill. And I just think to myself, here I am, the kid in class, always beating. And that could have easily been a referral, detention, get out my room. But for whatever reason, to this one teacher, he was like, oh, that beating is actually rhythmic. You actually have something there. That's just not a noisemaker. Like, have you considered band? And just something as small as that just changed the entire trajectory of that student, me. And so now I think of it in the same way when I'm teaching any students, whether it be our SPED students who are gifted and talented, whether it be our ED students who know the stuff, but sometimes they're really hyper. Like, instead of just looking at what they can't do, you pause and you say, what is that one gift that they can do? I remember one student was an amazing artist. Anytime I would teach, this kid was doodling on the paper. And to some teachers, hey, quit drawing, quit pay attention, quit drawing. Wow. And so I did the opposite. Hey, keep drawing. What I didn't know at that time, and research now shows that there are some people who learn better when they're actually moving. That's where the fidget spinners came into play, where the spin, the movement, the holding, the something actually help generate more thoughts and more attention to their brain. So this student was drawing some great art. And so I said, hey man, every time you're in my class, please Here's some paper. Here's some computer paper from my room. How many pencils do you need? Let's do this thing. Oh, you need point 0.7 lead. Here's point 0.7 lead. Whatever it takes. Because
Yeah.
I knew that this student had a gift and I was trying to catch the student up. And so that's exactly what happened. The student came in and he was reading on like a pre-primer level, 14-year-old. And I'm like, okay, as long as you with me, you're safe. We're going to catch you up. Got him on the IEP, did all the things, but I wanted him to continue to draw because drawing was his gift, and then we'll catch up the rest. Cool
Well,
thing
all the
was I saw,
research now is showing that that hand to paper connection, it doesn't matter that what you're drawing is connected to what you're trying to learn. It
right,
imprints on your brain, and now there's this whole movement for sketchnoting. It's really just a more organized way to doodle while you learn, but it makes teachers feel better about allowing it. But I, over my 30 years, the number of kids that have come to my room almost in tears because the teacher said to them they have to put their notebook away, and they would say, "But I can't learn if I don't draw."
yes,
And
yes,
so, unfortunately, we had to start by writing it in their IEPs to allow them to draw during lecture. And then over the years, the teachers would see, oh my gosh, they really are learning. And luckily now, like we don't have to put that in IEPs anymore.
that's
It's
good.
just natural. And
Yeah,
for teachers to take that risk, but the training that the teachers have sometimes says if they're not looking at you, if they're not following this specific way, that's
yeah,
then you have a behavior management issue. And
yeah.
so
and,
thank you
and
for
that's just I sadly that's kind of what the teacher colleges have shown, or that's what you've always seen when you're watching movies. When you're watching movies, the perfect classroom is everybody in straight lines, everybody absolutely quiet, everybody's looking at the teacher's writing on the chalkboard, and you can hear a pin drop. And I'm like, for whatever reason, that has been like inside, that has been ingrained in educators'
yeah.
brains. When the truth of the matter is, every student will learn different.
Or if
And
it's
if it
not, so
means
you
that,
can hear a pin drop, it's in a comedy. Like
yes,
you're supposed to make fun of it because it's
yes,
not right. You're like, no, but they got it right.
yes. I think one of the funniest scenes is Kindergarten Cop, where Arnold walks
Love
inside of the
it.
classroom and he literally sees what real learning looks like. Now the rest of the movie is garbage because now he has him like a drill sergeant and all the little kindergarten kids are doing it perfectly. But no, like it's okay to have chaos because even in the chaos you have students learning. I remember doing a workshop with a group of teachers, and this educator came up to me, and this was in the South. She said, "Honey, child," and so I knew right then, like this is going to be a great conversation. She said, "Honey, child, let me just tell you now, I am going to be quilting during this whole workshop. And that doesn't mean that I am not paying attention, sir." I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "What it means is by the end of this, my quilt will be done, but I will learn everything that you taught."
Oh, neat.
Yes, ma'am. So throughout the entire workshop, it was a 3-day workshop. So throughout the 3 days, I'm giving, strategies. We're talking, we're discussing, we're breaking out into groups. And that entire time, she was in a happy place. By the end of it, she had made like 6 different, like little blanket things, almost like hand towels, pretty much. And she gave them away. And she was like,
Ah,
"These are for you." And I said, "I appreciate it, but instead, let's give them to, we have 30 plus educators. Can't we just do them as giveaways?" And she said, "Yeah." So that really got me to thinking, how many other students are that way?
yeah.
How are our students needing something to hold, something to move, something to grab, to grip in order to continue learning? So just being mindful of that as educators, as SPED educators.
Wonderful. I have a box in my room called the fidget box, and I spent a couple days at the beginning of the year like this is how you use it appropriately. I spend some time, hey, everybody just get one and play because I know y'all think they're toys. And so they play with
Yes,
it for a while, and for the first couple days, like everybody grabs something when they come in. But after that first week is over, really only the kids who need it end up grabbing it because it's a distraction to everybody else. They don't really want one. I mean, of course, there's always the ornery kid who's like, I don't want to listen, I don't want to learn, and so they're trying to just. But that's a discipline issue, and that's in everything. We can't not
Yeah,
offer strategies because of the 5%. We have to teach to the 95%, and that's so
absolutely.
important to me. And really, the issues are less if you can allow it.
Yeah, I loved when the fidget spinner was a fad. I we would have some heated conversations with teachers because they saw it as toys.
Yeah.
And I explained to them growing up, my fidget spinner was the back of a pen because the back of the pen gave me
Yeah.
that. And that was my fidget. And I would do this 9 million times in class. And the teacher hated it, but it helped me trigger whatever thoughts like I could pay attention in class with that. And then what they're playing it as a distraction to others. And I'm like, maybe, but if we can, once again, if we can redirect that attention. So I loved how there were so many teachers actually using those fidget spinners as strategies, as
Yeah.
math strategies, doing reading, how long before you could speak. Like there are different ways students learn. And instead of telling them no, 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 tell them yes and. Like,
Oh,
how
I like
can
that.
we
Yes,
use that?
and
Yes, and
perfect.
how can we use a fidget spinner? Then they came out with the fidget cube, and I love that even more because now I have different areas to use and or the putty in the hand, like whatever it takes. Like you find what your students need and love, and you provide it for them and with them, and then you guys all kind of learn together.
And what you can live with. I think sometimes in special education we almost err backwards and we provide too much in trying to meet everybody perfectly. But like if I know I can't handle that clicking sound in my room, then provide
Mm-hmm.
other things that don't make sound. Like because some
Yes.
teachers it just they can't focus what they need to do. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just we have to find a way we can all work in this together. And so provide what works for you
Yes.
and your students and give options. Everybody's not going to be happy with their silly putty. Everybody's not going to be happy with the spinner. So you have to have options, but options you can live with so
Mm-hmm.
that you don't feel too stressed out because part of what takes us longer in special education is sometimes trying to do everything so individually when the solution could be here's a few options, pick one, and I can live with all of them.
Yes. And then by giving those options, now you're giving those students voice and choice.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, students will have more buy in because you provided them a choice. I go back to the classrooms that I was in, and we were using musical instruments of learning. Now, of course, next door, everybody hated it because it's loud.
You were
Of
that
course,
one.
yeah, of course, when visitors would come to the school, they would hear loud noises, and any instructional facilitator or principals or what, they would hear the loud noises and think that we're out of control. They'd come in, and then they hear the beating and the singing and the shouting and the chanting and yeah. But by providing voice and choice in those moments, really opened up their mind even more because there were singers in the class who really didn't know they could sing. There were artists in the class who didn't know that they were really good at art. Everybody loved the technology, of course, because, kids love technology. But they were finding out through the voice and choice that they actually had multiple gifts and multiple talents. And then now they're happy because they got to choose it. I'm happy because now we've got enough to space out and everybody's happy. And then everybody's learning. So yeah, I love that you brought that up. Thank you for lifting that up. That finding those opportunities where students can have voice and choice in whatever they decide to pick. Yeah.
And it's so important as well. Like in special education, we sometimes have students in our own rooms, but more often than not, we're trying to include them in a gen ed teacher's environment. And learning to get your foot in the door and getting those teachers comfortable with that choice is a lot more difficult. And so I
Mhm.
remember back when we started doing inclusion, because I've been around for a long time, 20 years ago or so, when it was like, what? We're doing what? Um, and teachers were scared, and rightly so, because they weren't prepared for it. It was like, okay, next year we're going to dump everybody in because that's just how everything works in education. And so
Uh-huh.
having to start slow with just two choices. Like in my room, you might have 15 choices, but I can't force that on another teacher's classroom. It's going to take more time and more learning away. So you go with two options. Find two options that teacher can live with and say, will you just let the child have these two options? And let's see if that helps him be less of a disruption and more of a participant in your classroom. And most teachers are okay with that. Okay, I can live with that. But we can't give them too big of a menu. And then what the beauty of it is as they start realizing, oh my goodness, this really works, they start saying, well, how about I offer this too? Like, yes, please. Or do you
Yeah.
think it's okay if I offer that to these kids that aren't on the IEP list? Yes, please. Because that's how we
Uh-huh.
normalize it.
I heard one teacher share having too much voice and choice this way. The teacher said, and the teacher made a nice anecdote about it. Said took her kid, to the candy store. And the kid was so excited about the candy store. But as soon as the kid saw all of the choices
Mm-hmm.
of candy, all of the sweets, all of the sours, all of the different types of chocolate, the kid just had a meltdown in the candy store because it was overwhelmingly too much voice and choice. And
Yeah.
so she had a great learning lesson that day. Like, okay, today we're going to go to the candy store, but just in this section of chocolate, pick. And by having that, there wasn't any meltdown. Or in this section, just the sours. Let's
Yeah.
just find maybe it's the sour worms only. The different whatever. But then it helped, and I think it was the same way with when the inclusion started, where there were so many educators coming in. There was so much choice from those teachers. They got nervous. They got scared.
Yeah.
The homeroom teacher got nervous and scared as well because this is something I've never had a team partner before.
Right.
I don't know what to do. Maybe this person will call me out on the way that I teach. But it takes some time. Just with anything, I appreciate the communication that I do see now with our SPED educators and our homeroom teachers because they are working together now more, and those strategies work for all students. And so I've also seen some of our SPED teachers talking to the homeroom and say, well, have you considered trying it this way? This is just a small strategy. And so having that common knowledge and you're having just teamwork because we want all the students to learn.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in putting that time in up front. I think sometimes in special education, we feel like, well, I don't have time to teach them all of this why. I don't have time to have those conversations about what are you comfortable with? Because I got 25 to 30 IEPs and I got to get them all going. And I just need to jump in and tell you this is what you're going to do and jump out. But that
Yes.
costs us so much time later. Like, if we spend that time up front, then we can thrive by finding that time later because we don't have to do battle every 2 weeks on you need to keep doing this, you need to keep doing this because we got buy-in in the beginning. We created that trust system and the
Mm.
teachers start to take ownership of it, which might buy you time next year. Like next year you don't
Yes.
have to have that meeting because you all figured it out. And so
Yes.
sometimes we're so short-sighted in that how am I going to save time if this is taking time? But we have to look beyond the moment's time and think
Mm-hmm.
about all of our time going forward. And I think when I really bought into that, I saw a huge difference in my burnout rate. And suddenly I felt not so burned out anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Oftentimes, educators feel like we are in silos when it actually comes to teaching. I remember one principal saying they had a rough conversation during the staff meeting, and so here I am as a special guest coming in, to provide a workshop. And I'm looking around the room like, ooh, this is going to be a tough crowd. But what made it great at the end was the principal kind of took them through a breathing technique. And then afterwards said, hey, guys, we're all on the same team. Like, if you push everything else away, you want your babies to grow just like I want my babies to grow. You've got amazing strategies. Right. You've got amazing strategies that's going to help that teacher's class. That teacher has an amazing idea that's going to help. Like, we're all on the same team. And when she said that, you could just like feel a release in the room. Like, because you could tell there, I guess there was some bickering. Like, I felt that energy. Like, the energy was there. Like, oh, some people don't like each other or something happened. But it was like a release in the air. Like, we're all on the same team. We all want every one of our students who enter into the school to be successful. And so I love that doing that work up front, like you said, really helps bring that forth because we're all on the same team.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Well, we are almost out of time. Wow! I could just talk to you forever. I feel like it's just I can't believe it's been almost 30 minutes already. You're very inspiring and you've put in me listening to you talk. It's just made me more aware of how important everything I do and every decision I make is important to one student. And that's really in the end what I want and what all educators want is to make that difference. So thank you for inspiring us to think harder on that and let the standards go sometimes and do what we know is right. Because in the end, we're not responsible to those standards. And we're responsible to put a person out that can survive in society and do well. So.
I think that's one thing that as much as I hate what this pandemic has done to the hundreds of thousands of people and the families and the trauma that is brought in and the PTSD that everybody will, I hate that part. But what I can appreciate and find like that learning lesson is that we as an educational whole have stripped everything back down to the lowest common denominator, and that's the student. Seeing just my wife's class, my wife's second grade teacher, so being able to see her zoom in with her students and seeing her like, okay, she was supposed to read a book. She was supposed to do a read aloud, and she had her book up, and she had her book ready, and she's like, this is my book, and today, and they're going through what is the title, and and the illustrator, and I mean, everybody was great. And then the kids, being second graders, got excited. Hey, Miss Dowdy, look at my, and then, I mean, all of the kids went, hey, Miss Dowdy, look at my, and they all just start showing different things around the room. And my wife, being a funny educator that she is, instead of her reading the book, she was like, okay, show me. And so she went one by one and let them speak whatever they wanted to share. And of course, they had to use correct grammar, correct language, whole sentences, pauses after, like they just couldn't run through it. She had them actually clearly, and I started to think about it, they were presenting. That is a 21st century skill.
Yes.
That is a soft skill. That is a success skill, however you want to call it. She was still teaching them, but it had nothing to do with a standard, even though it is a standard. And I thought that was just so amazing to me because everybody like, here's my pet. Come here. And now the cat's all in the screen. And it was phenomenal. And I just sat there smiling because every one of those kids were engaged. Every one of those kids were still learning. And then they asked questions to those students. Sure. So this is my cat Fluffy. Well, how old is he? How long have you had him? And so now my wife is just sitting there as facilitator, which was phenomenal.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
So I can appreciate how the pandemic has shifted back to the core of what learning could really look like.
Yeah.
And it's not just about standards and busy work, but it's actually about making learning meaningful.
Yeah. So, and hopefully we'll be able to hold on to that in some way if and when we get to go back to face-to-face teaching. Um,
Yeah.
so we are down to about 30 seconds. So do
Okay.
you have an offer you want to talk about that you're giving people?
Yeah, so what we can do is we can just have a conversation. I'll call it like a free 30 minute consultation.
Oh, that's
And we'll
awesome.
just kind of do that.
I
And
hope
that way
people
I
take
can,
advantage of that.
yeah, I can help somebody and perhaps just be a good thought partner for them or with them moving forward. And we'll do something like that. So I'll do two of those for you.
Okay.
Two
So
30-minute
So everybody that's
giveaways.
watching, make sure you click on the link because that's how you get your name in the drawing. So gosh, you want to take advantage of that. That's awesome. Maybe I'll put my
Yeah,
name in, right?
yeah.
No, I won't. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Andre, for sharing with us today. And
Thank you.
we are done with this episode. So bye bye.